Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Haqiqatjou. And we have another great episode for you, talking about a diversity of topics, doing TikTok reactions, reading your chat and your super chat. So inshallah, I think you'll really enjoy this episode because we're talking about some very, very important issues that are affecting the ummah. And I hope you've been enjoying Haqiqatjou so far, or Haqiqatjou rather, so far. This is our 6th episode. Do you have any suggestions or feedback on our format? Please leave a comment. We do read the comments and we'd like to hear from you. I know a lot of people have been asking about the intro and outro music. You know, what is the status of that? It's a nasheed. It's a nasheed. It's purely vocal with duff. So if you believe that nasheeds are permissible, this is a vocal nasheed. It's not an instrumental song. So I just want to clarify that. I'm sure there's still going to be 200 comments on every single episode about it, but that's okay. Alhamdulillah. We are able to take feedback and criticism. So please share your thoughts, inshallah. I want to start off, I think the theme of today's episode is about divestment. What is divestment? Divestment means that you take your resources out, or your investment in a company, and you take that money out. So you're divesting in a company. So if you have a lot of money in some stock on the stock market, or you have a business, or you have some property, you divest by taking your money out. You take that investment out. That's divestment. And we know about divestment when it comes to Israel, for example, boycotting Israel. If there's any kind of resources or business that overlaps with Israel, Muslims for the past 8 months have been divesting from Israel more than ever. And alhamdulillah, this is good news. But there's a bigger concept of divestment, a more important concept of divestment. And this is really key to the question that every Muslim is asking. What can we do? What is going to happen in Palestine? What is going to happen with our brothers and sisters who are being ethnically cleansed in Palestine by the Israeli enemy? This is the question on everyone's mind, and everyone is talking about it. But we need to have less talk and more action. And that action that I want to advise everyone, and I have been recommending it over the past 8 months, is divestment, but not divestment in terms of money, because most of us don't have any kind of connection financially to the Zionist state. But I mean divestment in terms of our allegiances, divestment in terms of our ideas, divestment in terms of our values. Have we really divested from the West? Have we divested from this kind of U.S.-Israeli empire, this system? Because it's not just a government. It's not just a country. It's a system of ideas. It's a way of life. It does have the financial component, the corporate component, the global trade component. There is that aspect. And boycotting McDonald's, for example, or boycotting Starbucks, that is a financial divestment. That's important. We should continue to do that. But what about divesting in terms of ideas, in terms of our values? Do we still place these nations on a pedestal and look to them as role models or as an example? If we are ideally following Islamic guidelines and Islamic values, we know that we should not take these disbelievers who have shown all kinds of hostility to Islam and Muslims as role models. But still, there's that subtle influence. There's the influence of power. There's the influence of wealth. And what can really break that spell is the brutality that we've seen over the 8 months, the killing and the slaughter of Muslims that we have seen over the past months. This should be a wake-up call, so that if anyone is still deluded under this spell, that they will wake up and they will become woke They'll become woke from this kind of mind control. So we have to divest spiritually. We have to divest intellectually. We have to divest in terms of understanding. Okay, well, here's an example. The best model for governance is liberal democracy, and the best regime for human happiness is this liberal human rights, and the best way to model your family is according to a feminist equality companionship model, and the best way to raise your children is according to this kind of secular educational model, and the best way to discipline your children is to not discipline them at all. For example, you have to consider your children more like your partners, your equals. This kind of liberal, positive psychology understanding of raising children. We have to divest from all of these things mentally, in terms of where our values are, what we see as important. And if we weren't doing that before on the basis of just sound Islamic aqidah and true Islamic belief, understanding the difference between kufr and iman, understanding the difference between values that are coming, man-made values invented by disbelievers, whereas true guidance from Allah, from the Quran and Sunnah, if we didn't understand that fully before, then certainly now we have to understand it. Certainly now we have to have that wake-up call and divest. Because guess what? What they're doing to Palestinians, they would do to any one of us. They would do to any one of us. They perhaps want to do that. They want to spread that death and destruction. And I'm talking about the U.S. Israeli hegemony over the entire globe. Whichever population becomes dispensable, whichever population becomes a nuisance, then that population has to be liquidated. And we've seen that throughout the past 200 years, certainly in the past 75 years. How many genocides and massacres and death and destruction have we seen at the hands of the United States, for example? Now, by the same token, if they would do it to Palestinians, they're doing it to them, they're going to do it to us. Similarly, some of these rulers, some of these leaders that are allowing this to happen to our Palestinian brothers and sisters, they would allow it to happen to me or you. They would also sit back and do nothing for me and you. So whenever you see all of this injustice happening to our Palestinian brothers and sisters, imagine yourself, because the same exact thing applies to you and me. So this has to be a wake-up call. That's, the message that I want to begin the show with. Now, inshallah, we're going to look at some of the applications of this kind of intellectual divestment. How do we really divest and become independent as an ummah? Because it's not just about separating ourselves, but what are we building as the alternative to sustain and nourish the Muslim community and the ummah at large? How do we inculcate that ummah first mentality? That is what we want to talk about today, inshallah. And we're going to have TikTok reactions. So a lot of people seem to like the reactions. We'll have more of that. And your super chats. So please, if you have any comment that you want to put at the top of the queue, you can donate a super chat, and we will get to all the super chats in the stream, and we'll actually display your comment, inshallah. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter, because we have exclusive updates that come through the newsletter. We want to make the newsletter interesting, stuff that is not posted on social media. It's exclusive to the newsletter. Updates on Genius of Islam, episode 4, for example. A lot of you have been asking about Genius of Islam. We give updates on the episodes, but it comes through the newsletter. So if you want those updates, then sign up for the newsletter. Make sure it's not going into spam when we send you an email, and we don't spam your inbox. An email maybe twice a month at most. So inshallah. And then also subscribe to the channel. So many of our viewers will watch the show, will watch our videos, but they won't subscribe. I don't know why they don't do this, but don't worry, you can subscribe. Nothing bad is going to happen. Okay, let's go to the first topic. And this is major news that has come out. COVID guidelines caused millions to suffer. Now Fauci admits there was no science behind it. So everyone knows Fauci. He reached this kind of global prominence as the face of the medical establishment, giving guidelines on, how we should manage this pandemic. And now he was taken before Congress and questioned in the U.S., and Republican lawmakers questioned him. And he basically admitted that a lot of the recommendations, the main recommendations, there was really no studies behind it. There were no studies that he was aware of. Now, before you, question what this is, this source, this is USA Today. This is a major American online source. You also have other sources that mention Dr. Anthony Fauci confesses he made up, quote unquote, COVID rules, including 6 feet social distancing and masking kids. So this is Fauci said he does not know where the 6-foot social distancing rule came from. He also said that he was unaware of studies recommending masks for kids. So this should be quite shocking to some of you. It's not shocking to me. Because for the 2 years of this pandemic, I was pointing out that what's really the science behind all of this. Wasn't doing it on YouTube because YouTube would immediately ban any channel that questioned this narrative. And even now, who knows what their policies are? I have to be careful of what I say because even the channel could be at risk right now. Just talking about what is official news, that the science, quote unquote, was made up. Now, there's also been other big breakthrough piece of news, which is that one of the versions of the vaccine, AstraZeneca admits because of a lawsuit that their vaccine caused rare and deadly side effects. For the first time, they admitted it, even though this information was available. The pharmaceutical giant is being sued in class action over claims that its injection caused death and serious injury in dozens of cases. So what does dozens mean exactly? What is the extent of this? So people like me, for the past, during that whole pandemic era, the 2 years, we were saying that, look, there needs to be skepticism. There needs to be actual verification. There needs to be an independent way to understand what is actually happening. What are the dangers? What is actually efficacious in preventing this kind of disease? Because it's a real disease. I got it. I was suffering from it for a couple of weeks. I took certain measures to get better, and alhamdulillah, I got better, but it wasn't basically the establishment recommendation for how to get better. I took a different course of treatment and immediately got better, alhamdulillah, once I realized that, okay, it's not going to go away by itself. But for some people, it was serious, so I'm not denying that this is a serious virus. What is the origins of that virus? Well, there was a difference of opinion. And if you said that, well, this is something that was originated in a lab, like the Wuhan lab or the lab leak theory, your channel would be banned. You'd be nuked from social media. Then later it was revealed that actually there's a lot of credence to that theory. And then it actually became the official story of where COVID came from. It's through this lab leak in China. So the story, this is the shocking thing, that their story regarding the virus, regarding what measures to take, regarding the efficacy of the vaccine, their story kept changing. They kept updating it. They kept even 180 degrees going back on what they had said previously on every single aspect of this pandemic. And if a trustworthy person came to me and kept changing his story regarding any issue, I would, have a healthy dose of doubt, skepticism. But if someone who is not trustworthy, someone who has a history of lying, has a history of corruption, has a history of animosity and maliciousness towards life, as these government officials have proven over decades, centuries even, why would I trust them? Like, why would I believe that they're telling me something that will benefit me, something that is good for people? This seems completely implausible, that any rational person would harbor serious doubts, just given the nature of who's pushing these kinds of regulations. But given that it's also the government of the West pushing this and trying to spread this across the globe, then I'm even more skeptical. I'm even more likely to consider it to be all garbage and potentially deadly. So again, we couldn't really talk about it much on social media. We still can't. Who knows, what kind of regulations that they still have in place that could penalize you for pointing out these basic truths. But I was mostly posting on my website, MuslimSkeptic.com. I was posting on my social media, Telegram specifically. I did post on Twitter, but my Twitter got shut down right in the middle of this whole pandemic. So, but on Telegram, I have a long record just questioning, bringing up different data points. And alhamdulillah, there was a lot of people who benefited from that. But the disappointing thing is the number of Muslims who fell into this kind of trust. How can you trust them? How can you trust these people? Nothing that they say is plausible. Nothing that they say. And now you have Fauci admitting that it was made up. So you had Muslim communities, you had Muslim nations shutting down masajid. Hajj was canceled. Hajj was canceled that first year. I don't know if you remember. And even the second year, it was highly restricted. Hajj, right? Ramadan, Taraweeh was canceled. Congregational prayer was canceled in so many masajid throughout the world. There were countrywide policies. And even when they did allow prayer, it was 6 feet apart. You have to cover your face, which is makruh according to certain madhahib, or it could even potentially invalidate your salah according to other opinions. So you're making a mockery, basically, of the salah. You're implementing these rules, and ultimately those rules were based on nothing. It was just made up. And you have one of the senior most medical officials admitting this under oath in Congress. Where is the accountability? Because it's not like no one knew that this is not trustworthy. The only reason that you thought it was trustworthy, those officials or those imams and community leaders or rulers who did think it was trustworthy, the only reason was through blind following. Taqleed, basically. You did taqleed of the people that are the least, that are the worst people to do taqleed of. You were doing taqleed of them. You did not fact check. You did not verify. You did not look into what they're exactly saying. And this is actually what Allah says in the Quran. If a fasiq comes to you with news, then verify it. Otherwise, there's going to be great harm. This is what Allah says in the Quran. So who is a bigger fasiq than the leaders of these Western nations? Do you not realize that? So if they come to you with this kind of news about this deadly virus, and the kind of actions that you have to take to battle this virus, shouldn't you fact check this before you make a decision that is impacting so directly and critically the religion of Islam and the practice of Islam by Muslims, over 1 billion Muslims around the world, nearly 2 billion Muslims? Subhanallah. And then it comes out, Allah reveals how foolish to trust such people. They just made it up. There's no study. We just made it up. And the consequences were dire. Beyond just, the impact to religion and deen and worship. The religions were dire in terms of family. How many families suffered because they couldn't see each other? And I know so many examples of elderly parents who couldn't see their children in the last moments of their lives because of these kinds of regulations that were based on nothing. There were children who were just being isolated. Solitary confinement is the only way to describe it, because of these kinds of social distancing measures where they're being distanced from their parents, from their family, 6-year-old, 5-year-old, 3-year-old, being masked and being isolated because of, as Fauci put it, something that we made up. So, subhanAllah. And people who had no risk, absolutely. What is the risk to a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old? Zero. Actually, literally zero risk. And that data was available, that science, if you want to trust the science, there was plenty of science, but you didn't trust science. You trusted these officials. You trusted these, the worst of the worst, most corrupt. And they played the Muslim community. They played, unfortunately, a large body of the ummah and a large body of the ulama. I'm sad to say this. I'm very sad to say this. I lost a lot of respect for many of these scholars and imams, because you're not actually implementing the true Islamic values. We have this value that you have to, do not imitate. Do not do tashabbuh bil kuffar. Like, do not imitate kuffar, disbelievers. Like, you have to have a healthy distance. This is a very clear value. You express this in the way you dress and how you act and how you behave. There's a whole discussion in terms of fiqh of what this means in terms of your appearance and how you carry yourself as a Muslim. Do not imitate the disbelievers. There has to be a distinction. It's clear who the believers are and who the disbelievers are. But you're not implementing the true value, or you're not actually implementing the full implications of this value in Islam. How can you not do? You're avoiding tashabbuh when it comes to your dress, but when it comes to how you organize your life, you're following 100% in imitating the disbelievers and taking their recommendations as if this is sent by Allah. Whatever they say, you're just implementing it. And some of these masajid were even going ahead of the curve. They were actually implementing these distancing rules and these masking rules even when they weren't required to by the government. They just are such good and obedient little slaves, such good Muslims, such obedient little puppies, that they were, in some of the masajid, implementing these regulations even without the government requiring it. How humiliating. How humiliating. So some of the receipts that we can look at. Here, I don't know if any of you saw this. So our brother Muhammad Hijab says that he almost died, actually, after he got an injection. This was shared by the Deen Show, Eddie of the Deen Show. And Eddie did a lot of great work. Eddie was, mashallah, at the forefront of publicly talking about, what is going on here? Like, why are Muslims falling into this, following this Pied Piper of this quote-unquote medical establishment? He was at the forefront, and he did a lot on his channel. So Allah preserve our brother Eddie of the Deen Show, but look at what he posted on his channel.
Let me tell you something. Hold on. After I took the vaccine, why do I know so much?
I wonder.
No, because then I got a blood clot.
No.
Yeah. I got pulmonary. I myself got pulmonary embolism.
That's awful.
Yeah, I got pulmonary embolism from it.
And what happened? What did
So-
they do?
How long ago was this?
This was some months ago. Some months ago, yeah.
Are you okay now?
Now I'm alright, you know what? No. So, no. I took the vaccine. I got pulmonary embolism because about 10 days after I took the vaccine.
Actually, I'm here filming people. Would you mind saying this on camera?
Well, look.
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, I know, but...
And then some 10 days, 11 days later, I was coughing out blood. So I was thinking, what's this? In fact, I came to Speaker's Corner on that day. And I was thinking, I'm losing my fitness. I'm losing because what happens when you have pulmonary embolism is that your breathing becomes very short breathing and stuff.
Yeah.
So what happened after that is one of my friends here in the park, they took me to the hospital. I said, I don't want to stay here, man. Do you know what I'm saying? So they took me to St. Mary's, which is nearby. And we done a blood test. Well, you know, they do something called a D-dimer, which is like so I done the D-dimer, blood test, and they said that you can't leave the hospital. I said, what's going on? They said, you've got a blood clot. I said, come on, man, I want to go home. I won't waste my time. So what happened after that was they said, okay, they looked at it, and I had what you call lung infarction as well.
Right.
So what happens is when you get a pulmonary embolisms are blood clots in the lung. Yeah, there are three different arteries. You know, so you call the segmental arteries, the subsegmental arteries, and then you got the pulmonary artery. Yeah, the segmental artery is like the medium one. The subsegmental is the smallest one. The pulmonary artery is like the thickest one. If the blood clot goes through the pulmonary artery, it kills you. This is sudden death. It's sudden death. Yeah. So what happened was, my one was in the segmental artery. So it's not. So you got your pulmonary artery, you got segmental artery, and then you have the subsegmental artery. My blood clots, because there was many of them, it came through the segmental artery, So what it is that they done a MRI and CT scan, I should say, and they saw that what happens when you have pulmonary embolism is lung infarction is basically when you have death of the lung. So my left lung basically died, part of it, and it doesn't come back to life.
Well, it's permanent.
It's permanent damage. It's permanent damage. It is permanent damage.
Wow.
Now, the thing is, when I was speaking to some, because I went to more than one hospital, because I had more than one episode, I spoke to a few people, and from the doctors, they're telling me that, do you know what, people die from this at your age. And with me, I insisted the guys knew me in the hospital, whatever, they done the yellow card, which is to say that they reported it, that I had what you call an unprovoked situation. But a lot of times it's not the case. Look, I'm 29. I'm 29 years old. 29, for me personally, I took the vaccine. I was not, I was not erring in the side of caution from that perspective, but I regretted it. Now I'm getting messages on my phone saying take the second dose. So, okay. Hey,
Oh my God.
and if you don't take the second dose, what's going to happen? That you got all these consequences. And genuinely, I've taken the vaccine as per the recommendation of the government, done what every law-abiding citizen is meant to do. 10 days later, I was on the brink of dying in a hospital, coughing out blood and couldn't breathe. In some therefore, I will say this. I'm not saying to anybody, I'm not saying don't take vaccines. I'm not saying that. It's up to you what you want to do with your life. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Honestly, this is genuinely as a personal decision.
Yes.
But what I am
I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I almost died.
going to say is, from my experience as a 29-year-old, when I took that vaccine, 10 days later, they were telling me we need to see for the first 5 days whether you're going to survive or not. That's what they told me.
And you had no...
And
That's
you
what
don't
they told
want
me.
anyone else to go through?
No. For me, I was ready.
Well, okay, but
why
you
am I?
wish it. I wouldn't want
No, I don't know. I was a bit ready, I done my will, actually. I had my will already in place, but you have to make sure, by the way, you have a will, your will has to be ready.
So, subhanAllah, this is, may Allah preserve our brother Muhammad Hijab. But this is shocking, this is what so many Muslims went through. Non-Muslims went through it, and they don't deserve to suffer. No one deserves to suffer. And from this kind of medical intervention. So, subhanAllah, imagine, and brother Hijab, he's healthy, strong man, and he's being brought to his knees because of this kind of drug. And now we see, even the manufacturers, the pharmaceutical companies, they have to admit that, yeah, there are these very deadly side effects that some people will suffer. They won't tell us how many exactly, but they're getting sued in court. So AstraZeneca is one. And there's not much news coverage of this because it's going to cause a lot of problems for the population's trust in the government and what the government pushes. So, but anyone who is aware of what these governments have done to people over history, it's not surprising. It's not surprising. Muslims should not have been surprised. And this is why from the beginning of the pandemic, I was telling Muslims that why do we not have our own abilities to fact check, to determine, okay, what is the nature of this disease? How can it be prevented? How can it be treated? Where is our own independent resources? And this is epistemology. You all should know what epistemology means. Epistemology means what is knowledge? What is truth? How do we know what we know? Do we know what we know? What is the justification for what we know or what we consider to be true or false? We cannot rely on the epistemological sources of disbelievers. We cannot rely on them in the sense that we are giving our lives, we put life and death in the hands of the disbelievers. Like, how can we do that? Like, what if this turned out to be, what if the side effects were much worse and affected a much larger amount of the population? And then, because you had so many institutions, Muslim institutions, and scholars, and masajid, and whole entire countries that were mandating, you have to take this. You have to take this drug. What if the consequences were so severe? You could be wiping out half of the ummah or more. Even if you're taking out 1%, look at the cost. Why? Because you put the life and death of Muslims in the hands of this epistemology that what is grounding it? Like, did Allah say that you have to trust the medical establishment? Did Allah say, like, this particular medical establishment dominating the world, you have to trust them? Did Allah say that? Did Allah authorize that? Did the Prophet ﷺ authorize that? Who has authorized it? That you have this kind of obedience and trust and ta'ah that you have for them. This is shocking. Their whole attitude was sami'na wa ata'na. We hear and we obey. That's an attitude you have for Allah and whoever Allah has authorized. But no one has authorized them. And there's so much reason to doubt and be skeptical of what they recommend and what they are pushing onto people. It just blows my mind to think that this is beyond naivete. The average lay Muslim, okay, maybe he's naive. But these authorities, it's negligence. This is severe negligence, and you played with the lives of the Muslim community, the ummah. Where's the accountability for this? And where is the lesson learned that, okay, we were duped, and because we strayed from the principles, the usul of our deen, not to put our lives in the hands of disbelievers, not to imitate the disbelievers, not to do tashabbuh, not to make the disbelievers awliya over us, guardians over us. All of these very important, critical principles that are spelled out in many ayat of the Quran. Where is the accountability for violating those principles in such a reckless, catastrophic way? That's the question that I have, and I have had. So much that we can say, like, people were pushing this, like these figures, Al-Maghrib Institute, this Abu Isa joke, even before the injection was released In November, he was pushing it. An Islamic perspective on the COVID vaccine. November 2020. So even before this vaccine was developed, he was peddling it. So this is shocking. So let's see. What are the comments that you're leaving me right now? Let's look at super chats. Okay. Free Palestine, Jazakallah khair for your super chat. When is Genius of Islam episode 4 going to be released? Inshallah, within 2 or 3 months. That's the timeline. Jazakallah khair BXZ. Allah bless the only Muslim think tank, MuslimSkeptic. You guys take on complex topics that plague the situation of the Ummah and refute all Taghut ideologies. Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair for those kind words, brother. Let's see. Shadman Khan, did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala drown innocents in Noah's flood? Why? So in the flood or any kind of natural disaster, there are innocent people that could be affected by that are not disobedient people, they're not rebelling against Allah, but they can still be taken as victims in such natural disasters, but they're shuhada, they're martyrs, they're shaheed. And we know this in Islam, but this applies to people of every time. That if you drown, for example, or your house collapses on you in an earthquake, or any kind of like natural disaster like that, then if you're a believer, you die as a shaheed. So this is not some kind of moral dilemma. Chocolate Walla, Jazakallah khair for your super chat. I know folks who couldn't see their loved ones on their deathbeds due to isolation measures at hospitals. They will never forgive these people. Yeah, they shouldn't. Spaghetti bolognese. Thank you for your super chat. That looks quite delicious. And then Parviz also sent a sticker. Jazakallah khair for your super chat as well. So keep those super chats coming. We will address all of them, inshallah, as long as they're not inappropriate for some reason. So let's go back to who else has been pushing these kinds of measures that we're talking about. How about Yaqeen Institute? Yaqeen Institute as well. They had a lot pushing the injection, as we'll call it. Here are some receipts for you, if I can pull them up. Okay, so you had... This was the Canadian Muslim COVID-19 Task Force. There was a U.S. task force as well, and they basically became the mouthpieces of the medical establishment, pharmaceutical-owned medical establishment, pushing basically whatever, uncritically, just trust the experts, just trust the experts. And then you had organizations like Yaqeen Institute pushing that as well and trying to encourage Muslims to get this injection. So, the Uyghurs, everyone loves them, right? Well, they're having all this experience with vaccination. So the Uyghur experience. And you can see Yaqeen Institute on the bottom there with Islamic Relief co-sponsoring this kind of propaganda straight from Fauci, straight from Pfizer and AstraZeneca. They became basically peddlers of this. Oh, the Ottoman Empire. Everyone loves the Ottoman Empire. Everyone loves the last caliphate. Well, guess what? They were also mandating these injections. So you know, there's no problem if these Western governments do it, and you better get it. You know, subhanallah, look at the betrayal of the ummah. Yeah, how can you forgive these people? Like, how can you forget what they're doing, and then no, not even a whiff of apology or regret, like, oh, we should have been known better, or fine, we didn't know better, but we're sorry, you know, how only Allah knows how many Muslims have been injured or almost lost their lives or did lose their lives because we just did taqleed of Fauci. And we did taqleed of someone who just came on record saying that he was making it up. They were making it up as they went along. And just on the sheer basis of bullying, they convinced us that they were speaking the truth. They just said, oh, we're experts, trust us. And we trusted them. And we're the leaders of the Muslim community. Trust us, you know, just like you should. So, widespread. So, subhanAllah, this is shocking stuff. But as I said, zero accountability. Not even a whiff of apology, not a whiff of any kind of, well, what damages did you cause? There needs to be lawsuits, frankly. I was advocating this during the pandemic. I was saying, you know, we have to hold these people accountable. There needs to be lawsuits. Like, if you have suffered, why not? You should be able to sue. So something to consider, like some of these organizations. Another organization that was really problematic was UMMAH, Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America. Very problematic in the amount of propaganda that they pushed with no question. So, you know, getting the injection, you know, they did their best to dispel. See, as for the suggested risks of the injection, it must be stressed here that the resident fatwa committee of UMMAH is not the entity that should opine on this matter. Okay, then who should opine on it? But rather the experts in public health agencies. Oh, the experts. Okay. So you mean these non-Muslims who are bought and paid for by corporations that really have proven over and over and over again that they care little for human life. Oh, those experts we should trust. Oh, okay. Thank you for authorizing them as a fatwa committee. I'm a trusting Muslim, and you're telling me to trust these agencies. In our assessment, some of those risks are nothing more than unfounded rumors. Some are plausible, but there's just a lot of unfounded rumors, so who can tell? However, here are some noteworthy considerations. The approval of such injections is not a decision that's left to one person or company, but it's conducted by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and similar agencies in other countries, and they follow stringent practices that consider the risk-benefit ratio, which is congruent in alignment with the principles of Sharia. Oh, okay. So they're authorizing these agencies. And they're saying these agencies are acting according to the principles of Sharia. Risk-benefit ratio, maslaha and mafsada, weighing that's part of the Sharia. These agencies are basically like Sharia councils. So UMMAH was also informed by trustworthy Muslim physicians that the Pfizer injection has now been approved by the FDA, has been studied on 40,000 participants, and for more than 2 months, none of them had serious side effects. This surpasses the needed numbers for such trials and for a period that exceeds the period in which serious side effects usually take place, etc. So we've checked, you know, a Muslim physician says that, oh, this is perfectly fine. Based on the aforementioned and because of the nature of the danger the world faces, the postulated risks are not sufficient to make the injection impermissible, and the least that could be said is that it's prescribed. It's either permissible or it's recommended for individuals to take. As for the public health authorities, it's incumbent on them to make it available for the people for their benefit and protection. So it's, I guess, fard kifaya, like the public health authorities have to make this available for people, and then people, they should take it. It's recommended. They didn't say it's obligatory, but it's maybe mustahab. So, subhanAllah, where's the accountability? You know, would they actually even, given everything that's known so far, would they even recognize their blunder or not? You know, shaving the beard to properly fit the N95 mask for protection. They gave a fatwa even on trimming and shaving the beard. As shaving is permissible for extraordinary indication to prioritize the sacredness of life and prevent harm to oneself and others. So yeah, shave the beard. If you need to properly fit the mask. What's the science behind that? Well, the physicians are saying it. The public health officials are saying it. So forget about all the physicians. There were physicians who were saying the opposite. They're saying that this is actually going to make things worse. Well, just 100% we have to trust the experts. I just want us to remember that. That all these different fatwas, all these different fatawa. One fatwa that was interesting is cremating the bodies of the deceased. So this was one claim that some in the Muslim world were making, that we have to cremate bodies, which means burn bodies, which is haram. Like, this is when a dead body has to be buried, not burnt to ash. And so they say that there is no disagreement among Muslims concerning the default ruling in this matter. In Islam, the cremation of corpses is considered mutilation and is thus prohibited. So they go on to explain this, and then they say that, avoid this. Even if the health authorities say do it, you have to actually protest this, which was pretty shocking. So at the end, you see, we add that if the authorities in a particular country attempt to pass laws requiring the cremation of corpses with the presence of other alternatives that would prevent the harming of the living, it would become an obligation upon the Muslims to work together with members of other faiths in an attempt to block such legislation from being passed into law. So that's very interesting. Like, they're saying in this fatwa that if they're trying to mandate through law cremation of corpses for prevention of the spread of the coronavirus, then protest this or work with other faith communities to prevent this. Block such legislation. Well, what about everything else? Why is the red line that Amjad is drawing the cremation? What about all of these other regulations that where you're canceling Friday prayers, you're canceling Hajj, you're canceling Ramadan, Taraweeh, you're canceling all of these rituals that are critical to Islam, shaving the beard. So this is shocking. Hold on a second. I'm getting a call. Yeah, so 1 second. Yeah, so it's hard to believe that this is the level of sorry. Okay, let's look at the chat. Like, don't you guys feel that this is shocking? There's also the whole issue of, at the same time was Black Lives Matter protests, right? You had Black Lives Matter protests, protesting George Floyd. And you had people like Sohaib Webb that are saying it is a must for Muslims to go and support these protests. But wait, there's a pandemic. Shouldn't we be isolated? Like, shouldn't we've been not going to the masjid to pray. We've canceled Friday prayers, but we should go to the Black Lives Matter protests in a bunch of like a crowded place and protest for Black lives. This kind of contradiction. But, this was lost on many people, especially in the U.S. So, any other comments? Yeah, so did we learn from this situation is my question. And it doesn't seem like it. So in terms of others pushing, you have Yasser Qadi, of course, was hardcore pushing this medication, saying stop spreading conspiracy theories, stop spreading, just trust the experts. Just trust the experts. Said, oh, this is not a blanket endorsement of the injections. He always puts this little caveat to give him an exit. Plausible. Now, I'm not giving a blanket endorsement. I'm just saying don't listen to anyone who speaks out against it because they're not qualified. So he even had like a live stream on his channel talking to a doctor like about about the vax. So I mean, this is no accountability, no, like why are you so gung-ho pushing this? Like when it comes to every other kind of drug, you have decades of trials. You need to have at least 5 years of trials, but now everything is being pushed within a month. And how do we know the long-term effects? No one can know that except Allah. So people should roll the dice. Anyway. So if you have any other comments or super chats on that topic, but again, we have to have our own independent epistemology. We have to divest from the epistemology of the West. We have to divest and understand that this is just going to lead us astray. When we rely on those who do not believe in Allah, they do not believe in the Quran, they do not believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when you cannot put your life in their hands as a Muslim, like that is haram for you to do. And this is a basic asl of the deen. It's part of not taking the disbelievers as awliya over you. We can work with disbelievers, we can ally with non-Muslims, all of that is permissible. And we see that in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. But to put our lives in their hands and to just take their epistemology on something so critical that is affecting the Muslim world, the ummah, the economy of the ummah, the prayer and the fast and the worship of the ummah, the ties of kinship between parents and children in the ummah and the extended family, like all of these things were deeply impacted in such a horrific way. And you relied on liars who later they claim, oh, we just made it up. There's no science behind it. Isn't this, it's just, I can barely wrap my head around how irresponsible and bold, the audacity to not even apologize, there's not going to be any consequences for these people, these multimillionaires like Fauci. There's not going to be any consequence for the damage that he's caused. And the people who parroted him, like his slaves, his little puppies in the Muslim community, there's not going to be, at this rate, any consequences for them either, or any accountability. And that's what I mean, accountability. How about an apology? How about, look, I was mistaken. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have promoted this. I should have been smarter about this. There's nothing of that. So this is what I mean by divestment. Okay. Let's see. What other super chats? We have Mirza Jazakallah Khairi saying, your younger brother always praying for you. Barakallahu Feek, brother. Really appreciate that. We really need all of your dua, all of your prayers. Here is another super chat. Jazakallah khair. Sarah says, please discuss the issue of Muslim female influencers on your channel. Not only are they engaging in tabarruj, working with LGBT, showing deeply personal aspects of their lives, but also recently promoting BDS brand. They're like promoting things that are supposed to be boycotted. Yeah, we will cover some of these Muslim female influencers. There's episodes that we have in mind, actually, and they will cover some of these female influencers and how they're pushing not only feminism, but also just, immodesty, distortion of deen. This is an issue that really has to be addressed. And I've done a lot to address it in the past, but some of you are just new subscribers. You haven't really been following me for many years. But there's the example of Linda Sarsour, for example, or Zahra Billu, or other female influencers like Tamara Gray, who spread feminism and LGBT and all of this, and I've critiqued them. But if you haven't been following me since like 2017 or 2016, then you wouldn't be aware of these critiques. So we have to kind of refresh the slate. And there's like new people, there's new influencers, and they're even worse, arguably, than the previous generation. Okay, so now let's get into some reactions. We need to get a little bit lighter with the mood. We want to talk about these TikToks. So let's just share this.
You know what I find ironic about Islam? So everyone knows that Muslims don't believe that Jesus Christ was actually crucified. According to the Quran, it only appeared as Christ got crucified. But as Christians, what do we know about the crucifixion? We know that it was the most important day in human history, and it's how God reconciled us to himself through his Son. Without the death, burial, and resurrection, Christianity does not start. This is the message that the apostles died for. So if the enemy wanted to make a new religion, what would he do? Well, he would mix many lies with partial truths. Oh yeah, Jesus was a prophet of God. Oh yeah, Jesus was the Messiah. Oh yeah, Jesus is going to come back again. Oh yeah, he was born of a virgin as well. Oh yeah, Jesus never sinned. But, by the way, Jesus was never God and he also wasn't crucified. Perfect recipe for the Antichrist.
Okay, like if you want to mix a lot of truths with lies, why isn't it true that he is a prophet, that Isa, Jesus alayhi salam, is born of a virgin, he is a prophet, he had all these miracles, and the lie is that he's actually God? Maybe that's the lie. Maybe that's, you mix a lot of truths with that one lie. That would be a perfect deception, wouldn't it? Because you think that you're, a God-fearing Christian and you're a dutiful, obedient Christian who submits to God, but you're really worshiping someone who is not God. Isn't that the satanic deception? You're, instead of worshiping the true God, the creator, the Father, as you call him, you're worshiping other than the Father. Why is that not the true deception? Why isn't that not like the satanic ploy or the ploy of the Antichrist? Because the Antichrist is going to come and demand to be worshipped. Isn't that the prime characteristic of the Antichrist in the Christian tradition and in the Muslim tradition, how we understand the Dajjal, Masih Dajjal? The Antichrist, he's going to first claim to be the Messiah, and then he's going to claim to be God. That claiming to be God, that is the arch deception of the Antichrist. And Islam says that there's only one God. And he is not incarnate. He is not in the flesh. He is a transcendent God, the creator. And that's how we are protected from the Antichrist. We cannot follow the Antichrist for this reason. And the Prophet ﷺ made it very clear that the Antichrist is one-eyed. He's one-eyed. He has a defective eye, and so he can only see through one eye. And Allah is not one-eyed, meaning Allah is not, doesn't have a defective vision like the Antichrist. And we know that, the Antichrist cannot be God. But Christians will be more susceptible to follow the Antichrist because they've already accepted the idea that God can be a man. So who's really closer to the Antichrist deception and falling for it?
It makes sense that the enemy would want to pervert the most important day in human history, and deceiving billions of people while he's at it. Jesus Christ in John chapter 15 verse 13 said that there is no greater act of love than this, than for one to give up his life for his friends. Our God is an incarnational God, not only loving us and laying down his life for us, and feeling every single pain we ever felt, but calling us his friend in the process. In Islam, you're not even allowed to call Allah your father. But in Christianity,
Like, Jesus is your friend, like he's your best bud. Like, this is, I don't even think that traditionally Christians had this kind of view of God as just being your personal buddy. This seems to be like a modern millennial type of televangelist Christianity that doesn't have a basis in tradition. And the idea that God is laying down his life for you, like a sacrifice for a higher purpose, like that makes sense if your sacrifice means something. Like when you die and you sacrifice yourself, you are basically giving up your life in the world and you're going to another abode. So all of the pleasures and the joys that you experience in life are going to cease because you're going to be dead. But you have taken that kind of sacrifice for the sake of a higher goal, for the saving, your family, for example. You protect your family by sacrificing yourself, or there is some kind of principle that you want to die for, like some civil rights cause or whatever. You want to die for your country, for example. That's noble because you have so much skin in the game, literally. You're like alive, and then you're going to lose all of that. But God is God, according to the Christian understanding. God is God. He is not losing anything. Sacrificing himself doesn't mean anything because he is not going from one abode to another. So this is just like an anthropomorphization, making God human in a way that doesn't really make sense, that doesn't really apply. And people generally understand this. Like the idea of God's being human comes from paganism. Like God's having human needs and human desires and suffering from human pains. And that's coming from paganism. If you've seen the videos that we have on Hinduism and paganism, you've watched Genius of Islam episode 3. Like that's the kind of projection of human qualities on God, but it's something that doesn't make sense for an all-powerful, all-knowing creator. It just doesn't apply unless you just don't understand what God means. And that's the contradiction within Christianity. They do understand the idea of an all-powerful creator, all-knowing, omniscient creator, yet he has these human sacrifice is applied to him, but it just doesn't transfer. It doesn't make sense.
Christianity, we become adopted sons and daughters through our baptism. Here, let me explain to the Muslims why I find the doctrine of their crucifixion to be so offensive. Suppose you really like this girl and you ask her out on a date. She says yes, and you go on the date goes really well, and you're on like cloud 9. You're super happy. And then 3 days later, you find out that the girl you asked out on a date was actually not her. It was a robot that looks exactly like her. You do the same thing with the doctrine of the crucifixion. Our God gave himself up in an act of total love and total sacrifice. And it wasn't just for me, but for you as well. Jesus.
Well, this poor kid, like he's probably 16 years old. The best analogy he can think of to talk about God is having a girlfriend.
Christ in John chapter 6 verse 44 said that no one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him. And my prayer for all Muslims watching this is that the Father draws all Muslims near to his Son.
Okay. Yeah, so this is like it's an emotional attachment that so many Christians have. And it's important, like emotion and spirituality is a part of one's relationship with his creator, his or her creator. But if that's the only thing that defines your relationship, what about the other aspects or facets of the human experience, such as your mind? Like, does it make sense to talk about God in this way? Like, put your emotions aside. Yeah, God is loving. In Islam, we have the same concept of a loving God, a merciful God. God loves you even more than your own mother loves you. We have these kinds of, we have this understanding of Allah. That's who Allah is. But Allah is also, we are able to rationally understand that God is the creator. He has these qualities. He has these attributes. And he cannot be reduced to like a son or a begotten son, or have this kind of multifaceted Trinitarian conception, this doesn't make much sense. But to be a Christian, you have to shut off that part of who you are, like your mind, and just give into emotionality. So we pray that Christians realize this folly of associating partners with God.
God bless.
Being gay is haram, then why are women so beautiful? I'm serious though, like why do I feel happiness? Like every time I see a beautiful woman. I think it's haram that you think I should not be attracted to them, so sorry.
That's kind of stupid. So you're attracted to women. So she describes this attraction to women as you get happy if you see like a beautiful woman, and if you're a woman, then that means that you're gay. This is a false conclusion. Like, you can be a woman and find other women beautiful. Why does that make you gay? You can be a man and find other men handsome. You know, that's natural. Like, even when it came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, many of the Sahaba described his beauty, and they said that they were in awe of how beautiful he was, that his face was like the shining moon, even brighter than a full moon. This is how they described the Prophet. You don't think they got joy and happiness from seeing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? It's just this kind of corrupt post-sexual revolution falsehood that has been created regarding this, you know, oh, this makes you a homosexual, like this makes you gay or a lesbian if you find the same sex beautiful. No, you can find, you know, the same sex, like your father, your male relatives as a man, like, yeah, they were handsome, mashallah, Allah has made them beautiful. You can even find yourself beautiful when you look in the mirror. And when you look in the mirror, you should say alhamdulillah. You can say, you know, subhanallah, remember Allah, that Allah has created me in this form. So that kind of reaction to the creation of Allah, whether it's the same sex or the opposite sex, or like your wife, for example, that's natural. But suddenly this has been turned into, oh, well, it must mean that you are in the closet. So this is a corruption of human nature. In Islam, like, you can find the same sex attractive or beautiful. There's no issue with that. That's just an observation. Like, mashallah, what a handsome brother. Mashallah, what a handsome brother. The imam, mashallah, he's so handsome. And you can admire them, and you say mashallah, you say subhanallah. Why is this being turned into something dirty? You know, that's just your sick mind. So this has caused so much confusion, because now people think that, oh, I saw someone and I thought he was handsome, that means that I'm in the closet. Like, this is brainwashing. People have been brainwashed.
I think it's haram that you think I should not be attracted to them, so sorry.
Well, I'm not gonna tell people I'm Muslim because I'm scared of it.
Haram police are the ones that are actually pushing people out of religion, and they are the ones that are deterring people from joining. It's time we talk about it, because it will be the same people talking about feminism, liberalism, and every other ism in the book, saying that that is what's corrupting our religion, when in reality it's them. It's the way they harass and abuse people in the name of religion, in the name of giving advice, in the name of giving dawah. Show no compassion, and they'll shame you for sinning as if we aren't all sinners. They'll be
The haram police, they're not compassionate. You know, this is the big problem with the world, is the haram police.
authoritarian to feed their own insecurities, and then build themselves a pedestal so that they can look down on you from it. They make you lose hope in religion, and when you have no hope, you lose your faith. It is time we expose the danger that they are to our community.
It's a danger. You know, if someone says, like, oh, you're doing haram by your public actions, then this is something that will take you away from deen. So this is a danger to the Muslim community. Like, such theatrics, like the drama. Like, does anyone take this seriously? Like, if someone, like, imagine the haram police. Like in my comment section, there are haram police. They're constantly saying things like, "Oh, Daniel, why did you play music in your intro?" I'm saying this is not. This is a nasheed. This is pure vocals. Am I like threat? Like, is this a danger? Like, am I gonna shut down? Like, I'm gonna leave Islam because people criticized me and said, "Oh, Daniel, this is wrong." No, I can be calm about it, evaluate. Maybe I do need to correct myself, or maybe the critics are incorrect and I'm doing fine. Ultimately, I answer to Allah. So when Allah questions me on this, I have to be able to respond to him. Like that kind of humbleness to be able to take criticism is so important. That's such an important part of being Muslim. Like you have to be able to take criticism and be corrected. To face this kind of judgment. But these liberals want to pretend like, oh, they're against judgment, but they're constantly judging people for not being liberal enough, for not being tolerant of their liberalism, feminism, pro-LGBT attitudes enough. They're judging everyone else, the rest of the ummah, and they are crying like, this guy is. So no judging is like the worst kind of cope. And it's just cringe, like so stupid. But there's so many TikToks just on don't judge. Like, oh, why are you judging me? I'm going to leave Islam. Okay, well, do whatever you want to do. Don't care. In Islam, we have to call out what is wrong. That is pushed publicly. So you have a TikTok that's pushing all kinds of trash. People are going to call you out on it, and they should. In fact, they should call you out more. And it should make you feel bad so that you take that trash off the internet. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. More hijabi self-defense. What was that? They took a gun? Yeah, so if you didn't see the previous episode, there was this hijabi self-defense, and it was quite humorous. The kind of moves that she was teaching hijabis how to defend themselves. So now it's anti-self-defense. These poor aunties are learning self-defense, and it looks quite comical, I have to say. Oh, take the gun. Oh, got it. This is, standing in a circle holding hands. Like, imagine if you go to a dojo with men, or go to a gym with men, like a boxing gym, and all the men are in a circle holding hands with each other, like sharing their feelings. We're learning how to fight, brothers. Let's all hold hands and talk about our feelings. Like, you won't see that. Like, that's a feminine thing. So even when women are learning self-defense, like this is like how they fight. Yeah. So as I mentioned in the previous reaction, this is like the masculinization of women, Muslim women. Even the poor aunties have to be fighters. They have to be like Khabib. And the converse, that the Muslim men are being emasculated and feminized. So everything is being reversed. And, if Muslim women want to defend themselves, they should invest in, maybe pepper spray, follow your local laws, maybe a firearm, like follow your local laws. That's how you can defend yourself if you really are worried about that. But the best self-defense is to actually have a strong Muslim husband. Get your husband to take these kinds of self-defense courses, fighting, boxing, wrestling, grappling, jiu-jitsu, judo, kung fu even. Have your husband and your male family members training for this. Don't send your auntie. Don't send your poor auntie. She has to be, making delicious biryani for you and everyone in the family, taking care of you and your family. That's what aunties need to be focused on. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. That they're nourishing the next generation. They're nourishing their families with delicious halal biryani, amazing food, and not doing this nonsense. Like, it's not effective. Like, this is not going to, if there's an attacker, this is going to do nothing. What chance does one of these aunties have against men? This is actually dangerous. Like, what is, because you're deluding these poor women to think that they are stronger and more independent than they actually are. So this is actually dangerous. And it's actually contrary to the interests of the family to empower women physically or in terms of career. This is actually dangerous. It destroys the family dynamic. Like, you have to have a healthy hypergamy of the husband or the father having that kind of power, strength, status, physical ability, physical strength. And that's what really drives the attraction from the wife for her husband, that he is so much stronger than she is, and she is vulnerable and she depends on him. That's what creates so much love and affection between the wife and the husband. Now, if the wife becomes like Bruce Lee and the man and her husband is like some weak nerd, then there's not going to be any attraction, or there's going to be relatively less attraction. And it's not something that you can control. It's something that's unconscious or subconscious. So you don't want your auntie to become Bruce Lee. That's all I'm saying. Don't send her to these classes. What's your guys' reaction, by the way? I want to see. I'm sure there's some funny comments. Okay, there's like a lot of... Here's one. Sparred a woman once, she couldn't even get through the session. Okay, don't spar with women. How about that? No, we don't want sparring with women. Jazakallah khair for your super chat, brother. What is this? I'll answer this question later. Okay. Yeah, so this is more hijabi self-defense. It's always good for a good laugh.
Christians and Muslims, Andrew's right. We have the same God. We just misinterpret things.
No, we don't.
The main difference.
Don't. Your God doesn't offer salvation.
That's not true. When you revert to Islam, when you become a good Muslim, you're supposed to repent. The words aren't the same, but it's the same theory. When you pray your sins away. When you do wudu every time before you pray, you're supposed to wash your sins away. You're supposed to cleanse yourself of your sin. We don't have confession, but you're supposed to. We don't say saved, but when you accept Islam, you are pure of your previous sins.
Zerka is a murtad, right? He used to be Muslim and then he became a Christian. So how does he know that there's salvation in Islam? He doesn't know that. Yeah, you guys are saying that he used to be Muslim. So Sneeko, the convert, mashallah, is educating him, but he didn't even know that there's salvation in Islam. Of course there is. You know, the salvation from the hellfire. Yeah, so it's weird.
You know, the only way you could ever make sense of Allah's name losing to Jesus Christ, a mere man, is if you said, well, the devil deceives, and therefore the devil was in Jesus Christ, but you still lose because you believe he's a prophet. Not devil, not demonically charged. So you lose both ways, actually.
We don't believe that Christianity...
What?
We believe that on the Day of Judgment, and also we believe that we can marry people in the book. We think that Christians and Jews could also go to heaven.
My daughter...
I didn't understand Zerka's argument that the devil is in Jesus. Like, what? Who says that? Well, here's a weird comment. I don't know if this is true. Like, Zerka got exposed 2 days ago, got banned on Kick. He was doing it with a 16-year-old, and age of consent is 18 in America. I don't know if that's true. Zerka saw Jesus in a dream. Yeah. So, yeah, there's no like intellectual basis. Oh, here's a good comment. Reminder, Daniel believes women shouldn't go to college. Thank you for the reminder. Appreciate it. I endorse this message. Yeah, so Zirka, I don't know this whole story, but age of consent varies by state. Yeah, so Allahu Alam. Anyway, some of you guys are hilarious in the chat. Hey, this is a very sad video. Check this out. Why is it like everything is mirrored? Let me see if I can unmirror it. My camera's mirrored, but why is the TikTok mirrored? Okay.
Ask me, Daddy, why don't I look like you? I said you look more like your mom, that's fine. She goes, yeah, but you and I don't look alike. And that made me curious, I ain't gonna lie. So later down the line, I took the test to find she wasn't mine. I go to my wife, I say, are you out your mind? You told her she was mine when you knew you were lying, so who's this she then? Actually, I don't even want to know. Daughter comes running in, Daddy, Daddy, what's wrong? I said, go to your room. She says, Daddy, Daddy. I said, baby, move. She says, Daddy. I said, I'm not your daddy. Her face confused. The mom goes, baby, go to your room. Why would you tell her that? I said, why wouldn't you? She said, okay. Okay, I'm sorry for not telling you. When we met, I was about a month pregnant. I made a mistake, it's true, but it turned out you were an amazing dude. So no, you're not her daddy because you helped create her bloom, but you are her daddy because you raised her too.
Imagine, like, this is what zina creates. You know, imagine the pain of that child, like that daughter. Her dad is being taken away from her, like stripped. Like, I don't know where I came from. This was my dad. This was my whole world. Little girl, and then he says, I'm not your daddy. You know, how can you not cry to hear such a story? And then how he must feel. So this is so common. You know, this is so common that families are broken up like this, or they don't even realize that they're not blood related. You just go through life thinking that he's your dad, but he's actually a stranger. Your dad is someone completely different, your biological father. So this is like a horror. This is among the most horrific things that can happen. But how do you prevent it? How do you stop it from happening? And this is the wisdom of Islam. Like, it's not enough to just tell people, yeah, don't cheat on your spouse, don't commit fornication. Like, you can say that as a theoretical matter. And this is what a lot of Christians, modern Christians, do. Like, I had that debate with Inspiring Philosophy. He's a Christian apologist. He's more like Googling philosophy. And he said, yeah, you know, there is rampant fornication by Christians, but our recommendation you have to just meditate. Tell teenagers to meditate and really avoid doing these kinds of things. Like, what world are you living in? You have to have actual policies, and you have to have a culture that's created by religious values. You have to have modesty. You have to practice a separation of the genders. Like, men and women should not mix. You know, what is with this co-ed schooling? Men and women, boys and girls are together. Why? You need to stop, you know, this delay of marriage for the purpose of education. Like, biologically, these teens are ready for marriage. They're ready for marriage. They're ready to start, you know, a family. But you're telling them, no, education is so much more important. So just hold yourself for years, maybe even a decade or more. This is unnatural. It's unnatural. It's barbaric. And it's eventually leads to all kinds of zina happening. And then these horror stories. Like this poor guy losing his daughter wasn't even his daughter the whole time.
I stepped back. She stepped forward. I said, step back. You mean to tell me this whole time I was a stepdad? Not that anything's wrong with being a stepdad, but I'm sure you would get mad if you didn't expect that.
Oh, assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, so this is like a horror story. When there's zina, no one's a winner. That's a good comment. That's a good motto here. There's zina, no one's a winner. God forbid anyone commits marriage. Because marriage is the taboo, unfortunately. Christians literally say, I'm sinning, but I don't care. Yep, it's very sad. Okay, the last reaction, then we will get to the end of the episode, inshallah.
Sister, the women's section is full right now, so can I go in the men's section and pray behind them? Astaghfirullah, sister, this is haram. Tawbah, 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 tawbah. You will cause fitna. What? Back in Prophet Muhammad's time, men and women used to pray in the same room. Women just stood behind men and kids stood behind women. Are you saying that it was not haram then, but now it is? Sister, everything a woman does is haram.
Hilarious. No. So, yeah, is the concept of fitna even valid anymore? Like, do these women putting up themselves wearing full makeup in front of the camera, like, do they not even know what fitna is? Or do they not accept the concept of fitna? This is like the effect of feminism. That, oh, it doesn't matter how I'm dressed. It's your responsibility to lower your gaze and to not look. But if I want to dress like a prostitute, you know, that's my right. If I want to make myself up and display myself everywhere, that's fine. You know, it doesn't matter what effect I have on you. Yeah, I might have an effect on you, but who cares? That's my right. I have to have the freedom. And this is just such perverted logic. Like, of course you're going to have an effect on people, but you're responsible for that. Like, you have a share of the responsibility. Yeah, of course others have to control themselves. They have to lower their gaze. And if they don't, like, they have a share of the sin, but you also have a share of the sin because you're displaying yourself. So that, and the fitna is what is going to come, you know, later. What's going to come in terms of zina, what's going to come in terms of broken homes, you know, this kind of problem that we're talking about with the man who was doing that spoken word presentation on the loss of his daughter. So that's the fitna that is so destructive and is so toxic, and you avoid that by creating gender separation and putting, even the idea of putting women behind men. Feminists will reject that now. They'll say, no, women should be side by side with men, and no barrier, no curtain, no boundary. And you see sometimes Eid prayers now that maybe 10 years ago you had Eid prayers and there's 1,000 people praying, but the men are in the front and the women are in the back, and you avoid a lot of fitna. Now, because of gender equality and feminism, they put the men's rows on the right and the women's rows on the left. So the men who are in the back can see the women in the front, and vice versa. They can see each other. There's no boundary. There's no curtain or parda or any kind of barrier. So yeah, this causes fitna, obviously. But even the concept of fitna has been deteriorated and omitted because of the influence of feminism and liberalism, and you don't see this being taught. you don't see on the minbar the imams teaching this concept of fitna, and that the fitna is caused by the actions of women and men. Both are responsible. So, what are your reactions to that? Yeah, not to mention poorly dressed women at Eid. That is definitely a problem. Yeah, it's like fitna central. And then they post their pictures on social media. Like, there were imams that were posting pictures of their daughters and their wives, like fully made up for Eid, and they're posting it. This is happening in the US. Alhamdulillah, now I think we've shamed them enough that they have stopped doing that. There are masjids now where the women are literally intermixed in rows with men. Yeah, so if the women are praying in the same row, then their salah is not even valid. Yeah, so anyway, let's go on with the show. So there's a really good article that I wanted to share with you. Let me just see where it is. This is a great newsletter. It's called Working Towards Ihsan. And it's written by this Muslim brother, Ahmed Sheikh. He's based out of the United States. He is a lawyer by profession, but he does a lot of investigative work on Muslim organizations. And in this article, check it out, subscribe to his newsletter. He talks about divestment in terms of, well, we know about boycotting McDonald's or Starbucks, but there are these halal Sharia compliant investment funds that Muslims are invested in, and they're supposed to be Sharia compliant, but he finds that some of these funds are invested in companies that profit off of Israel and the suffering of Palestinians. So this is shocking. Like, if it's an Islamic investment fund, why are they still invested in these Israeli-aligned companies? So he points out a couple Sharia portfolio. Talking about Chevron. They invest in Chevron, which extracts gas off the coast of Gaza. So this activity exacerbates the blockade of Gaza and is potentially pillaging Palestinian resources. So any fund or portfolio that is investing in Chevron is indirectly leading to more oppression and suffering for our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Unfortunately, Sharia portfolio falls into that category. Iman Funds and the North American Islamic Trust. This is another quote-unquote Sharia-compliant fund provider that invests in Chevron. Chevron is a gas company, gas and oil. So this is not Sharia-compliant. It should not be considered Sharia-compliant. Wahid Investments, which has a lot of ethical issues, and he's written previously, Ahmed Sheikh, about Wahid Invest, regarding being fined for fraud or deceit in their Sharia practices. They also invest in Chevron and Valero Energy. So this is contrary to ethical investment practices to not contribute to the suffering of Palestinians. BlackRock also has a few Islamic exchanges, quote-unquote Islamic, but BlackRock itself is Zionist, 100% Zionist, and they also invest in these type of Zionist-aligned companies as well. So where is the divestment? If you have if you're part of these Islamic funds, you maybe you have an investment manager that's managing your money, is investing in these Islamic Sharia compliant funds. Make sure that they comply with actual BDS requirements, divestment requirements, so that there's no money that is going to support some of these major companies that profit off of Palestinian suffering. This is important. So check out this article. You can just Google Working Towards Ihsan newsletter, and it's the latest report. Very good work by our brother Ahmed Sheikh. Let's see. So we did talk a little bit about UMMAH and their COVID fatwa, and how I'm wondering, where is the accountability for what they recommended? Do they have any kind of revisiting of these issues? Maybe they want to correct themselves, update, or issue apologies or anything like that. They have a conference that's coming up in September. And I think this interesting conference that I want to talk about. So, fiqh responses to challenges facing Muslim families in the West. This is a conference by the Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America. Generally, they have been a great scholarly board, like a fatwa board or Dar al-Ifta. And I've spoken at their conference back in 2017, I believe. I spoke on their conference. That was an interesting conference, and maybe one day I'll share with you more about what happened. But unfortunately, ever since this kind of COVID fatwa era, they have really put out some bizarre stuff. And I don't have the same level of trust in them as a fatwa body as I did in the past. And they have, unfortunately, a lot of association with deviant imams, compassionate imams, and the Dawah mafia, and it seems like they have been infiltrated, basically. This is a sad situation, because I think that their leadership of UMMAH, mashallah, great scholars, and who have done so much for the Muslim community, but it seems like they're getting played. But what's interesting is this upcoming conference on challenges facing the Muslim family. So if you look at these topics, it just a lot of topics having to do with the rights of a wife. How can we secure the rights of a wife? Making sure she's getting her due, making sure that she is being protected. A lot of topics on these or subtopics dedicated to that. What is relations with in-laws, living arrangements, expenses, authority. Okay, that's an interesting issue. Financial assurances for stay-at-home wife. So what does that mean? Like, if she's a stay-at-home wife, you have to give her like extra compensation, like an extra salary in addition to the nafaqah that you're already giving up. Who knows what they're going to say on this topic. Right to compensation for labor beyond the scope of marital care. So compensation for labor. So if you're a woman, like, how are you going to be compensated? Is that what this is referring to? I don't know. I don't know exactly, what they're going to be talking about. But it's just interesting that the challenges facing Muslim families in the West, the biggest challenges are coming from feminism. Feminism is causing the biggest problems, yet I don't even see feminism mentioned in this program on these, or mentioned anywhere in these subtopics. So this seems to be an oversight, or maybe they deliberately avoided the word feminism, but they're going to address it, or they're going to be speakers who address it. Who knows? Only Allah knows. It's a conference coming up in September, so we can revisit it then. But if they don't address feminism as the main challenge facing Muslim families in the West, then that is a huge oversight. And I know that these imams know that feminism is the problem, is the main problem. Yeah, you have problems when it comes to deadbeat dads or deadbeat Muslim husbands, that they don't give their wife their rights, their due shari'i rights. But the bigger problem in this day and age is feminism, because the legal system has empowered this kind of feminist attitude. And the imams know this. The imams know. And inshallah, on Haqiqatjou, we're going to have a series on the challenges facing Muslim families and Muslim marriage in particular. And we're going to have 4 or 5 entries, and we're going to start with the concept of khula. khula, which has been misunderstood, incorrectly translated as a woman's divorce, women's talaq. We're going to address khula. We're going to look at what these schools of thought, the madhahib, say about khula, about the woman's right to exit a marriage. What is that right? Does she have the right? We're going to have a whole, episode dedicated to this, or at least half of an episode. And there's a lot of research and information that we're going to share. So stay tuned for that coming up probably later this week on the next episode, probably. But yeah, so it's a disappointment that we're not seeing any kind of feminism mentioned in this program. But we can't really judge until we see what the final speakers list and what are the actual papers that are going to be presented. So that's that. Other important news in the West, you have Donald Trump convicted of 34 counts. So he's guilty as sin, Donald Trump. And then, this is shocking in a sense because it's like he is treated like a political dissident, and they're bringing up these kinds of charges, these bogus charges, like they're getting him on a technicality. The kind of things that he's being tried for and convicted of pale in comparison to the kind of corruption that we know these U.S. politicians engage in. The fraud and corruption that they engage in, not to mention the crimes against humanity, the votes that they give for war, for sending weapons to genocidal regimes. Like these kinds of crimes, no accountability, you're not going to face any charges. But Trump, and I'm not saying he's not a criminal, he is, as far as I'm concerned, he is a criminal. But what they're actually convicting him of is just a bogus charge, like technicalities. Why? Because he's seen as a dissident. Then you have Alex Jones. Alex Jones of InfoWars is hugely influential, millions of listeners, millions of followers, and he's being shut down basically by the government because he's spreading disinformation, conspiracy theories. But that's not the official reason. The official reason is that he was sued, and a judge ruled against him and awarded damages to the other side, to the plaintiff, for in the upwards of $1 billion. So now the government is seizing Alex Jones's assets and shutting him down, basically. So this is another example of a political dissident is silenced by the government. And then you have Julian Assange, for example, Julian Assange of WikiLeaks, who revealed all of this kind of government corruption, war crimes, all of these leaks over the years. And he's also a political dissident, but he faces, he's been imprisoned basically for years now, and they want to extradite him to the U.S. where they will presumably execute him. So this is the pattern, and it brings in mind the previous conversation that we had on apostasy laws. If you have a society that's a religious society and the authority within a society is based on religion, then the most devastating kind of disruption for that society is blasphemy or apostasy. Because the authority, what creates order within a religious society, is religious authority. And you undermine that by blaspheming God, or you apostatize, then that is a serious threat. It has to be deterred. The same thing happens in the West, but religion is not the basis of authority in Western society. The basis of authority is government, and the assumption that the government is, this beneficent, this, force for good, that they have moral authority. That is the basis of the government's role in people's lives in creating law and order. And the media as well. So if you have people who seriously are undermining the moral authority of the government or the honesty and the trustworthiness of the media, then they will face severe consequences. They will be imprisoned or they face execution. So this is what Donald Trump Alex Jones, and Julian Assange all have in common. They are, I don't want to say blasphemers, but they are undermining the authority of the ultimate force of law and order within society. So there's analogs here with blasphemy punishment in Islam. So how dare these people, that are supporters of liberal democracy, and they will cheer on something like a political dissident like Donald Trump being convicted, or Alex Jones having his entire work liquidated. How can they have a criticism of Islam and Islam's blasphemy laws? So that's just a point that I wanted to bring up as it's topical. There was also another dissident, Scott Ritter. He's very outspoken in supporting Palestinians, and he also has spoken a lot in favor of Russia. He has said many positive things in favor of Russia and against the U.S. government. So the U.S. authorities confiscated his passport, and while he was trying to travel to Russia, he was trying to catch a flight, and they confiscated his passport, so he couldn't travel. And this is not commented upon. Like, this is a severe consequence. You're limited from traveling. Whereas in the U.S., they claim you have freedom of speech, freedom of thought. You can say anything that you can criticize the government, no problem. Criticize Joe Biden, no problem. We allow everyone to criticize whatever they want. But in reality, if you are seen as a dissident with enough power, like a dissident who has enough influence, you're effective at what you do, then they shut you down. They will put these kinds of consequences on you, and it's just to show that, yeah, we can do this and much more. So watch your back. Now, let's put this here. So we talked a lot in this show about divestment, but I want to end the show on very interesting passages that I read. And these passages were pointed out by a scholar friend recently, or actually last year. And it's very relevant to what we do on this show. So a lot of people will criticize this show, and they'll criticize MuslimSkeptic and say, well, you're attacking the scholars and you are insulting them, and this is not wise, and why are you trying to cancel people? This is backbiting. This is actually completely un-Islamic. Like, look at the episode that we did reviewing Yasser Qadi's debate with Mustafa Akyol. Maybe 10% of the comments are just these fanboys. They're like, oh, you're backbiting. This is not the way. Oh, you're worthless, blah, blah, blah. So what is the status of critique of anyone? And we look at what Imam Ghazali says, actually, in Ihya Ulum ad-Din. In Ihya Ulum ad-Din, there's a section where Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah, talks about Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi anil Munkar, and it's been translated. So I want to share that with you. Let me just bring it on the screen. One second. Okay, it might be a little bit small, but I'll read it for you. Enjoining good and forbidding evil. So this is the section, and there's a subsection, the modes of prevention of sin. So this is what the Imam says. Know, O dear readers, that there are different modes of prevention of sins in different stages. The first stage is to know the condition of the sinner. The second stage is to inform him of the harm of sin. The third stage is to prevent him from doing the sinful act. The fourth stage is to advise him and give him admonition. The fifth stage is to rebuke him and use harsh words. The 6th stage is to apply force. The 7th stage is to give him threat of beating. The 8th stage is to actually beat him. The 9th stage is to use weapons against him. And 10th stage is to fight against him with followers and soldiers. So this is quite, direct. But look at the wisdom of what he's describing. So in the first stage, so he's describing these stages. The first stage, to spy into the secrets of a sinner, is prohibited. So there's no tajassus, there's no spying on people. One should not inquire what is occurring in a house, but if anyone informs you that a certain man is drinking wine or doing some unlawful act, it then becomes your duty to prevent it. So the first thing is to inquire about the condition of the sinner. So this is like something that has become known by people, and your job is to inquire. Like, don't just accept any accusations. Like, what is really happening? What is the status? So you have to be crystal clear on that. Otherwise, how can you enjoin good and forbid evil if you're acting on incomplete information? The second stage is to inform the sinner that he is committing or going to commit a sin. Many men do sinful acts out of ignorance. If warning is given, they may themselves desist from the sinful acts. For instance, an illiterate man observes his prayer but does not bow and prostrate well or prays with unclean cloth. Had he known them, he would not have prayed thus. Man is not born learned. Learning shall have to be acquired. So the second stage is just educate the person. Maybe they just don't know, so just let them know, like, did you know that this is actually not correct, or this is not right? You shouldn't do this. You give them information, but it's just very gentle. The third stage is to prohibit a sinner by sermon, admonition, and showing fear of God. If a man commits sin after knowing it to be a sin, he should be given sermon and shown fear of God's punishment. He should be informed of the traditions of the Prophet ﷺ, which deal with punishment of the crime. The Muslims are like one soul, and so the destructive faults should be removed from the soul. One who gives advice should take precaution whether he himself is free from that vice. He should then remember what God said to Jesus Christ, O son of Mary, first take advice to yourself. If you obey it, then give advice to the people, or else you will become ashamed of me. Once a man asked the sage Dawood Ta'i about the condition of a person who enjoins good and forbids evil to a ruler or a man in power. He said, I fear whipping by him. The man said, if the person can... Hold on. Where's the... If the person can bear it, he said, I fear death. The man said, if he can bear it, he said, I fear for himself praise begotten by praise of the people. Anyway, so a lot of important things said in that passage. Let me just go back. So you give admonition. So this is a little bit harsher. There's like this tadarruj, this step by step. First you just inform, but then you admonish, you criticize, you say, you should fear Allah. And the body of the ummah is like one body. If one part of it is in pain or is suffering from some kind of problem like sin, then the whole body is going to suffer. We know this hadith, but it's usually not cited in a way regarding amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. It's usually cited in a way that, oh, well, they're suffering, Muslims in Palestine are suffering, Muslims in Kashmir are suffering, therefore we have to do something. That's valid too, to use that hadith. But what about suffering from sin? What about suffering from deviance? If a part of the ummah is suffering in that way, the whole ummah is going to suffer, like one body. So we have a duty to purify. And, that's like the immune system. If there's an infection in one part of the body, the immune system from the whole body will be activated to fight that infection. So let's continue to the fourth stage. The fourth stage is abuse and using harsh words. Okay, so the idea is the progression happens if the person you're advising does not take the advice. If the person you're rebuking does not change his ways, he just continues. He is obstinate. He is arrogant. he will not take your admonition. Now, obviously, when you're doing Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi anil Munkar, you have, one of the conditions is that you are advising them on something that is clearly wrong. There can't be any ikhtilaf on the issue. It has to be something very clear cut in Islam. Otherwise, and you have to know about it confidently. So that's one of the main conditions. But if the person refuses to change his behavior, then that's where you advance through these stages to get to the fourth stage. And Imam Ghazali says, abuse, use harsh words. If there is a good result in the use of soft words with the wrongdoer, harsh words should not be resorted to. So if you advise someone and use soft words, you're gentle, and they change their ways, then don't escalate, right? When it fails, when the soft words fail, then use harsh words and abuse him. This is like the words of the Prophet Abraham, woe to you and what you worship except God. Use such words to him, O fool, don't you fear God? O sinner, O ignorant man. This wise man is he who has been described by the Prophet in the following words, the wise man is he who humbles himself and acts for what is after death, and the fool is he who follows low desires and hopes for forgiveness of God. There are two rules in this stage. 1, don't abuse except when necessary, and use harsh words when necessary. If appreciable result is not seen by the measure, express anger by turning away from him. So, have you guys heard this kind of advice? So, someone, and this is really the situation that we're in, because some of these zanadiqa, some of these deviants, they feel like they're above the law. They feel like they can promote every kind of deviance. They can violate every principle of Islam that they want and face no consequence. And if you are calling them out for that, then that is ghaiba. That is backbiting, or that is slander, or this is disrespect, or this is, like, all of these excuses are used. But in reality, there's been a progression. So if you look at my videos from 6 years ago, or articles from 8 years ago when I'm talking about these issues, I'm very polite, respectful, using soft words. I'm informing people of these issues. And privately, I'm talking to these imams, I'm talking to these individuals privately and telling them, like, this is wrong, what you're doing is very problematic, it's clearly a violation of deen. And some of them will even accept and agree and say, yeah, you're right, but I'm at a stage in my career where I can't do this right now. I have to do what's right for my career, for example. So then you have to progress. You advance, like, okay, then you use condemnation, you use harsher language, and then you even get to the stage where you can even insult. O fool, O ignorant one. This is what Imam Ghazali is recommending for those who are obstinate. They are not changing their ways. They're arrogant. They want to continue. So then we are entitled to escalate, and that is for the benefit, to turn people away from such individuals who cause so much deception, cause so much deviance in the Muslim community. There is a need for that. And it is not contrary to the Sunnah. It is not contrary to prophetic wisdom to use harsh language. So this is, and we see this from the Anbiya as well, as Imam Ghazali is referencing, from Prophet Ibrahim and other Anbiya, that they would use harsh words at times, like the Prophet Lut alayhi salam used harsh words with his people. So that is not for those who are ignorant and saying that, oh, harsh words, this is contrary to the Sunnah. No, it's not. Mockery is not against the Sunnah. Mockery of those who are deviating and distorting the religion is not contrary to the Sunnah. It's actually prescribed by the Sunnah. So when I sarcastically call people simp imam or compassionate imam, this is not contrary to the Sunnah. And Imam Ghazali is, advising this kind of approach. So the fifth stage is to correct evil by hand, such as pouring down wine, taking off silk from the body, ejecting from a land unlawfully occupied. This method should be adopted after the failure of the first 4 stages. Keep correction within limit and don't exceed what is necessary. So this is important caveat. We can't progress to this stage because we don't have the authority. So these imams, we don't have any authority to do anything with our hands. So put that out of your mind. We can only go to fourth stage because we don't have the authority to do anything physically. It's against the law. We don't have the authority. It's not our place. And this is not what Imam Ghazali is saying. If you do have the authority, then you can take those measures. Someone who has authority is like a government official or someone who is in some of these ministries. They might have the ability or the authority to do that. Or there is some limited legal authorities that is given to parents to discipline children, for example, like spanking, or taking away alcohol or whatever, like by hand. But for the rest of us, when it comes to this context of criticizing these imams for their promotion of liberalism and secularism and their attack on Khilafah, etc., we can only use our words. And Imam Ghazali is mentioning this, but we cannot use our hands. We don't have the authority to do so. So just making that very clear. So I know my followers wouldn't be foolish enough to do anything. But I have to just emphasize it because if la qadar Allah, God forbid something does happen, they'll say, oh, Daniel is radicalizing his followers to commit crimes. They're just itching to make that kind of accusation. So I have to be very clear. Do not violate any laws. Do not violate any kind of these principles. The second stage, or the sixth stage rather, is to threaten and warn. If all the previous modes of correction fail, this method should be adopted. For instance, one should say to the drunkard, throw away the wine, otherwise I shall break your head and I shall strike your neck, or I shall put you to disgrace. So that's pretty hardcore what Ghazali 1,000 years ago was advocating. And Imam Ghazali is supposed to be depicted as this, oh, he's a Sufi, soft, all about spirituality. He's saying, like, use threats. Again, this is illegal. If you don't have the authority to do this, do not break the law. Do not issue threats. But I'm reading this for educational purposes so that you understand what some of the great imams of our history have actually said regarding Amr bin Ma'ruf. Because you have a long history, unfortunately, in recent history, of these compassionate imams who have distorted Islam and they've made Islam seem like these things are not part of it, which is not true. And they've kind of fed into this, don't judge. You should never even judge people, let alone criticize them, let alone insult them, let alone threaten them. You shouldn't even judge anyone, for public sins that they do openly. So that's how far things have fallen, unfortunately. And then the seventh stage, he said, assault by hand or stick in case the previous modes of correction fail. This eighth stage is to fight the followers, being armed. So eighth stage is like going to war. Saying like going to war. Many a time people, arms are necessary to ward off evil because many a time wrongdoers with his party remain ready to fight when the two parties meet. Fight begins and it's necessary for pleasure of God and to remove the injuries of sinful actions if it's allowed for the warriors against the unbelievers. Similarly, it's necessary to bring the greatest transgressors under control. So even bringing Muslims, like transgressing Muslims, under control. So again, that's not relevant. We don't have the authority for these kinds of actions, but it's still good to understand what the imams have taught and what they've said about the reality of Amr bin Ma'ruf, Nahi Anil Munkar. Like, what is it? The reality is to bring about good. To bring about good and to ward off evil by any means necessary. And so sometimes that will require physical means and even war. And Islam is very clear about that. And other legal systems are clear about that too. They give the legal authority to executive powers to enforce the law through violence. And if people do not obey, then you escalate. There's escalation. So there's a fine. If you don't pay your fine, there are seizures. If you don't vacate your property when they're trying to seize it, they can imprison you. If you resist, they can kill you. Like, there's escalation even within the secular legal system. But Islam acknowledges that, and Islam says that this is a part of religion, whereas in the West, it's a part of the secular state. So let's. So So I hope you enjoyed what Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah has to say about Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi al Munkar. I hope I won't see any more of these nonsense comments. I'm sure I will, but we have to teach the people. So let's end the episode with super chats. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Let's see. Any super chats, send them in now because this is your last chance. This is your last chance. Should we vote for women or non-Muslims or at all? Yeah, don't vote. That's my recommendation. Let's see. I was banned from Reddit, the Islam subreddit, for recommending MuslimSkeptic. The mods justified this by saying that you promote anti-injection views. Okay, I'm surprised that that's the problem that they had with me. Islam subreddit is easily the biggest forum for Muslims online. Well, that's kind of sad. It's like just libtard central. But yeah, I'm surprised that that's the reason that you got banned. Or that's the reason that they gave for banning MuslimSkeptic from being mentioned. Whatever. You know, again, these are people who have no accountability for the damage that they cause by buying into lies. So Allah will deal with them. Amjad, Jazakallah khair for your super chat. Do you think that Allah will hold married, well-off men accountable for not marrying women who could have been saved from multiple fitan? Allah will punish you for not doing polygyny. Is that the question? Allahu alam, maybe there is such a situation. Like if he could have married a second wife, he had the opportunity to do so, but he didn't because he feared people instead of fearing Allah, then maybe for that he will be punished. Allahu alam. Sarah, Jazakallah khair for your super chat. I'm aware of Linda, Tamara, Taguri. Oh yeah, Taguri, the Playboy hijabi. Jazakallah khair for your good work. I was referring to lifestyle content influencers. With Love Lena, I don't know who that is. Aisha Haroon, don't know who that is. They have large followings and influence among young Muslim women. Okay, well, maybe someone, if there's a particular TikTok or short that needs responding to, I can do that. Just let me know. You can post comments, and I'll check it out, inshallah. In West politics, such as the USA, the Gaza war has woken up a lot of people to the influence of Zionism. What do you think will come from this in Western politics? Allahu alam, like they've just revealed their hand, like the level of Zionist power. And I think there's a backlash. Like people are not really happy with the fact that a foreign government is influencing their country's policies. So I think it's been a very damaging 8 months for the ability of Zionists to influence U.S. politics, because when you show your power level, then that makes you a target. And a lot of people are going to capitalize on that. In the UK, you see like Labour has lost so much Muslim support because of how beholden they were to Zionist influence. They didn't vote for ceasefire, so they had to show like the Zionist influence, and they lost a lot of votes because of that, and lost a lot of power because of that. So I think that's a trend that we'll see in the U.S. As well. We're already seeing like a split within the Republican Party and within the Democratic Party. Netanyahu is scheduled to speak to the U.S. Congress, and you have Democrats who are boycotting. They're not going to attend the session. So this is causing a kind of a split. And same with the Republican Party. There's a split that's happening between the Zionist Republicans, right wing, and the Republicans who are opposing any kind of Zionist influence or the Israeli lobby. So, Aqib, Jazakallah khair, he says, lots of love for the work you do. May Allah accept it. I mean, my question is, when you criticize scholars, why not take a poop sandwich approach? They're good, then they're bad, then they're good. Like, I should mention they're good, then they're bad, then they're good. But these are scholars that should be discredited because they should be not considered scholars. They should be considered zanadiqa, deviants, ahlul bid'ah. So you shouldn't be praising them. Like, you can note that, okay, yeah, they have some good things that they've put out maybe in the past, or they have some beneficial content, fine. But like, it's a poop sandwich. So even in your analogy, like, are you going to eat a poop sandwich just because it has good in it? Like, you have some delicious bread, lettuce, tomato, some mayo or mustard sauce, and then a delicious cut of meat, cold cuts or whatever, and then a tiny, what do you call it? A tiny nugget of feces right there in the middle of the sandwich. Are you going to take a big old bite of that sandwich? No. So all the good that they do is irrelevant when they have this kind of feces that they're pushing and promoting, and they're not apologetic about it. They don't correct themselves. So these people need to be discredited. Just like a poop sandwich has to be discarded. You don't eat it. You don't serve it to people. You discard it. Let's see. Daniel, are majority of Muslim women feminist? Unfortunately, in the West, I think that, yeah, the majority of Muslim women have feminist assumptions and feminist. They're not self-named feminists, because over the past 6 years we've made feminism into a bad word. So they won't identify as feminists, but they will still adopt some of these feminist ideas. Andros, Jazakallah khair for your super chats. I accept that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did not compose the Quran. I can't write or read Arabic, but I comprehend the recitation. If he was illiterate, he couldn't have written it. Yes, I agree. He could not. He did not. Hungry Hippos says, my local masjid is hosting a July 4th carnival. Well, that's really sad, simping for the US of A. Yeah, these celebrations are not permissible. Iman, Jazakallah khair, watching from the UK. Love you for the sake of Allah. Please come to UK again. Appreciate that. Jazakallah khair. I'd love to come to the UK again. That would be very nice. An amazing community, amazing brothers over there. So I appreciate all the support that I get from the UK brothers. MashaAllah. Okay, so final comments. Bro, speak about Wahhabism and their fitna in the Ummah. Yeah, it depends on what you mean by Wahhabism. If you mean Madkhalis, then yes, definitely need to have more topics on that. Stay tuned. More episodes of Haqiqatjou on Madkhalis. Let's see. Let's make things clear. No one's above the law in Islam. Definitely. There's accountability for everyone. Brother Juxtaposition says, feminism is now a stigma. It's a taboo. Yeah, the word is a taboo, but the actual beliefs are not. Oh, I also didn't mention like the debate challenge. So Sam Shamoun, this Christian apologist, I did a video debunking his top argument against Islam. he got triggered by this. He wrote like a rage-filled email using all kinds of foul language and all caps. And he said, I challenge you to debate. So I accepted the challenge. I posted publicly, I accept the challenge, but it has to be a fair and balanced topic. You can't just decide the topic. And he backed out of the original debate that we had scheduled in April. We were supposed to have a face-to-face debate in person. He got scared. He got cold feet, and he chickened out at the last minute as soon as he saw the topics. And now he's blaming modern day debates. Like James, James, the moderator of all of my debates, or most of them. He's calling James a rat. He's like calling James a filthy rat who lies. Because James came out and publicly said, yeah, it's actually Sam who backed out of the debate, not Daniel. So this guy is unstable. Like, unfortunately, I think he suffered from some kind of mental traumatic event that is causing him some kind of mental problems. So I feel bad, for that. But a debate challenge is a debate challenge. I accepted it. So ball's in your court, Shamoon. Let's see if you're going to man up. I recommend you see a therapist and get help. You have to be concerned about your mental health. Don't let your online grifting get in the way of your mental health. So seek therapy and then get ready for a debate. I hope you'll accept. I put out all the conditions there in a community post. All of you Shamoon fans, go tell him to man up. Stop dodging me. And we'll have a good debate. It can be a good, informative debate, inshallah. So that's our show. Haqiqat Show episode 6 is in the books. I'll see you later in the week. Hope you enjoyed it. There's going to be clips, obviously, of different parts of the stream. But leave a comment. Leave a comment about what you enjoyed in the show and any kind of influencers that you want me to react to. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter, to the channel, like the video. And inshallah, we're developing other episodes, better content, more informative. Inshallah, you'll enjoy it. And I will see you on the next one, bi'idhnillah. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.